Hey there. So it is the season of pumpkin, and we have the Anova Sous, and I thought, it would be neat to see what else we can make in it besides just really big chunks of meat. So I looked up a recipe and I found a recipe for pumpkin bread that actually comes from the Anova website recipe area. We'll link that below, and I'll link the recipe that I'm using. And let's try out making some pumpkin bread. So the first thing we're going to do is in our medium bowl, we're going to put the cup of flour and the spices and baking powder and baking soda. So there's cinnamon, nutmeg, a little bit of cloves, and then some baking powder and baking soda. I pre-measured those. Like I said, I'll link the recipe in the description box. And just whisk those up so that they're nice and distributed, so that the spices are mixed really good into the flour, and then kind of set that aside. In the second bowl, we're going to mix the wet ingredients. So that's going to be the pumpkin, which is 3/4 of a cup of pureed pumpkin. I used some from a can that I bought. We did not get pumpkins this year. We're kind of hoping to next year. See how that goes. The growing season here is super short, so you have to have things just right to get decent sized pumpkins. So that was 3/4 of a cup of pumpkin. We've got a 1/2 cup of oil, which I'm using canola oil because this is canola country and you pretty much get disowned if you don't use it, but the recipe actually says vegetable oil, so I'm pretty sure canola oil works quite fine. A 1/4 of a cup of brown sugar. They asked for dark brown sugar. All I had was the golden stuff. Let's see what it's like. If we really, really love this recipe, then I might actually buy the dark brown sugar just for it. And a 1/3 of a cup of granulated white sugar. And then same thing, we're going to mix those up until we get it good and combined. They call this pumpkin bread. We'll see what it tastes like. It's got a lot of sugar in it for bread. Seems like a cake leaning towards bread. All right. So then once that's done, okay, so we're also going to add the 1/2 teaspoon of salt and mix that in. The last thing it calls for is 2 large eggs to be whisked in one at a time. So it asks for 2 large eggs, so what I'm doing is 1 massively jumbo egg and 1 smaller, one of my blue eggs. Okay, so we have the 2 eggs here in a dish. You'll notice that the eggs from my chickens have super dark yolks. That comes from all the grass and stuff that they eat. Okay, so then we put in the 2 eggs one at a time and just whisk them until they're combined. That's a really big one. So get a nice soupy kind of pumpkin-y stuff there. Then we are going to fold in the flour. So this is our flour and spices. So you're just going to do it until it's mixed in. Now what we're going to do is we're going to portion the pumpkin mixture into the 1/2 pint glass jars. These are the short fat ones instead of the tall skinny ones. We're going to see if it makes any difference. I know in the picture they use the tall skinny ones. They're the same size, they're just a different shape. So we put the pumpkin mixture in those. Pre-spray them with cooking spray or butter them or whatever. huge, huge difference in how whatever you cook comes out. Even like when we did egg bites, if you Pam or cooking spray the jars, it makes a massive difference. All right, so one of the things they say is make sure you don't get the jars more than 2/3 full with the pumpkin. That leaves room for expansion when the bread rises, because it's got baking powder in it. It should rise at least a little. And according to the recipe, I need 4 jars. Also, if you're Canadian like me, they're the 250 milliliter jars. All right, so once you have your jars filled, then you're going to put the lids on. So each one gets a top, and a jar ring, making sure that we only just finger tighten the jar rings, don't make them too tight. There needs to be room for the air to escape while they're in the sous vide. All right, so there's our 4 jars ready to go into the sous vide bath. The Anova sous vide, it's in a plastic container here on the counter. And it's nice because it has a lid, so we can close it and keep the heat in. All right, so here go the jars. And we find that just holding them over the thing and dropping them is the easiest way to get them to go in. The heat on the sous vide is at 195, which is pretty darn hot. And we're going to leave them in for 3 hours and come back and take them out. So one thing about the Anova that's really cool is it has this nifty little app that you can use on your phone. So we want to cook for 3 hours and we set our timer, and you can see that the Anova is already running. We can see the temperature from my phone, and in 3 hours we'll be back. All right, so it's been the 3 hours and we've pulled the jars out of the water. I use dishwashing gloves to do that with. They're waterproof and slightly heat resistant, so you can use them to handle the jars when they're coming out of the water and not burn your fingers. So the recipe says when they come out of the water bath to take the lids off. So that's what I'm doing. I've got them on a rack here that lets them get cool. And the lids actually come off pretty easy because they have not yet set. You haven't heard the little pings from them. And you watch as you take the lids off, the bread is actually puffing up and it smells amazing. It has an amazing pumpkin spice smell. So once the lids are off, then we're gonna let them sit until they're room temperature, and then we're gonna pop them out of the containers and give them a taste. They look fantastic. They smell amazing. Something I did notice is that they have expanded right to fill the jars. Next time I might consider splitting them into 5 and seeing how that works, just because my sous vide bath is now full of oil. They obviously expanded enough that they pushed some of the cooking spray oil out of the jars, and so now the sous vide bath actually has a layer of oil on the top of it, so we'll have to clean that out before we use it again. So once they cooled off, then we take a butter knife and just slip it around the outside edge. And pop it out. Oh my god, it smells so good. It smells like pumpkin pie, honestly. And they're still a little warm. Honestly, I think you should eat them warm because they smell so good. And there we go. There is our pumpkin spice bread. Oh my god. That's amazing. It's like pumpkin pie, but bread. Excuse me. Yeah, it's totally like pumpkin pie, but in a bread form. I could totally see that being a fantastic dessert for like Thanksgiving or something like that. They say it serves 8, so like one of these halves is a serving. I may yet try it in the smaller size jars to see what happens, just because I like making things in jars. So this is our pumpkin pie bread. I will link in the description box the recipe. And I think they really hit a home run with this one. It's fantastic.